This is the Air Force's memorial at Runnymede in England. The building is an elegy to the fallen. It's a monument to loss, and for me, it's peculiarly suited to photography, which is, as Sontag wrote, an elegiac art. It's a space for contemplation, reflection, remembrance. It's a window looking out to the wider world, but there are reflections too and shadows, so that it's hard to disentangle which is which. You're looking out and you're looking in all at the same time. Here you'll find fragments of family histories from all over the world, letters to souls lost over 7 decades ago, pale facsimiles of dreaded telegrams, photographs, fresh flowers, fake flowers, and expressions of gratitude. I've made photographs of the tiny details as well as the big picture view. George Eliot wrote, "There is no private life that has not been determined by a wider public life." Private grief and public history are woven together here in this building and in my photographs of the architecture, the view, and the tributes people leave behind. Photography has an intricate relationship with these ideas, but personally it's more than that, because for me, the very act of taking a photograph is itself an act of nostalgia. Photography and memory are wound inextricably into my childhood and are integral to my identity now. My earliest memories are of crawling around my parents' darkroom in the red glow of the safe light, and although I didn't follow in their footsteps, returning to photography now feels like coming home. To use the German word, it's heimlich. My current work is also concerned with fragments of family history, reminiscence, remembrance, stories. Memory and its precarity is very much a theme in my own family's history and genetics. We're used to the idea that in photography we are seeking to fix a fleeting present. As David Campany puts it, to give permanent expression to ephemeral forms and ideas. This is heightened when a relative's dementia comes into the frame. The urge to freeze a moment is intensified for 2 reasons. The first is this: you're aware that the moment itself makes only a fleeting impression on the brain. You want to set it down. You're anticipating loss, anticipating reminiscence. You know that reminiscence is therapeutic, even if it is bittersweet. It's bittersweet even to make these images. We need to remember, but I don't pretend I'm recording an unadulterated objective truth here. As the person with the camera in my hand, I'm the one telling the story. But as Kuhn would remind me, telling is the wrong word. I'm constructing it, or rather, the version of it that I want to remember. Another actor in our tale might have quite a different perspective. And this is the second reason that the urge to freeze a moment becomes so keen. You're writing the story that you need to hear. There's a lot of sadness in this tale, sadness for the present and the future, and the long-buried sadnesses of the past that return to haunt. There's anger and frustration too. It would be so easy to let that dominate the narrative, and I'm not going to do that. So I'll use photography to catch happy moments on the run, and the pictures will keep us going when things look bleaker. This is my elegy in advance. I'm not the only one telling stories with pictures. My mother is at it too. The mantelpiece is where the museum of our lives is curated and recurated at regular intervals. Objects, prints, articles, and other mementos appear, sit together for a while, and then disappear as the story's emphasis shifts. The dramatis personae is set down, but there's no linear narrative here. It's all snapshots and vignettes and fragments from up and down the decades. I've been noticing the reappearance of odd objects, often juxtaposed with a surreal incongruity. In the fruit bowl, there's a dog's lead, a bell, a broken iPhone charger, a contact print. On top of the radio, some tea bags out to dry. So I see exactly where Beata Piontek's surreal still lives of dementia come from, the metaphorical qualities we assign to objects when we begin to understand the unravelling of minds, the sense that something is amiss in the story, that time is out of joint. And I fully understand the drive to tell the story of somebody absent through the objects they possessed, that Wendy Aldis shows us in her book, My Father's Things. We attach significance to objects in part because of their design or their usefulness, but also because of what they or their owner have come to mean to us. A house tells so many stories. In sharing photographs of that mantelpiece, I suppose you could say that I'm curating the curation, layer upon layer upon layer of reminiscence, past, present, future. Dementia is the red thread that is woven into our family fabric. It's my deepest fear. This work helps me keep that fear at bay. But then there's the flip side of that. To paraphrase Freud, those fears which are repressed will return in the form of the uncanny, from the Heimlich to the Unheimlich in a simple change of scene. These tree photographs that I'm making now are all about that fear. I wander in the woods until I don't know where I am. I think about the tangles of the mind, the memory of consciousness, and how the fractal structures of the trees remind me of the branching nature of thoughts and memories. John Feinstein in Breathers uses the holes in trees as a metaphor for the gaps in cognition that open up in dementia. To me, woodland scenes can look like a disordered, unruly tangle. Exactly what I'm afraid will happen to my brain too. In the Romantic tradition, I'm using the landscape as a metaphor for human consciousness and emotion. John Fowles wrote that woods defeat the viewfinder, and he might be right, but it doesn't stop me trying to find order, pattern, structure there, or at the very least, the calm spot in the eye of the storm. Though it may speak to my fears, it's a mindful practice, and it brings me peace. So what comes next? I don't think it's about moving elsewhere, but looking harder. For example, this scene tells me a different story every time I visit. Is that figure Blake's Nebuchadnezzar? Is it some upstart demigod being struck down by Zeus, a cowering golem on the way to Mount Doom? Or just my brain tying itself in knots, my shadow self? Different patterns and structures and stories reveal themselves with time if you are patient, watchful, and imaginative. This is true in the woods, and it's true with people too. So my photographic strategy is going to involve familiarity, not looking at things over and over in the same old ways, but using different tools of analysis and reflection to understand those things, to find different ways to frame the fragments of memories and the tangled fractals of the trees.